So I just came across an article on CNBC, and the title of the article is Google to cut down on employee laptop services and staplers for multi-year savings. So the CFO of Google sent out a company-wide memo saying that they are going to kick off multi-year employee service cuts, and Google will be cutting back on services, laptops, and equipment and other things. In the memo, the CFO says that these are big company-wide multi-year efforts to try to save money. Obviously, Google must be in trouble right now with the rise of AI and Microsoft investing in OpenAI and trying to integrate OpenAI with their search engine, Bing.
Come with me if you want to live.
Also, Google laid off about 12,000 people or so already this year. So things aren't looking great at Google, especially when they're talking about cutting back things like services, laptops, and equipment and staplers, because Google has always been infamously known for offering all these crazy perks. And that's also some of the stuff that they're going to be cutting back on. And I'll talk more about that right now. So these efforts are part of company-wide OKRs. And if you're not familiar with what OKR stands for, it's objectives and key results. And it's just something that companies use to try to set up their objectives and determine what their ideal results from those objectives would be. So in separate documents viewed by CNBC, it says that Google says it's cutting back on fitness classes, staplers, tape, and frequency of laptop replacements for employees. How many staplers and how much tape are they going through at Google that this is one of the things where they're like, dude, if we stop spending money on staplers and tape, we can definitely make back some of the money that we've lost and all this other stuff that we waste money on. So staplers and tape, first thing that's got to go. I get it. Now, if this isn't the most corporate-y line I've heard, but it said that one of the company's important objectives for 2023 is to deliver durable savings through improved velocity and efficiency. It's exactly what you would expect them to say, right? In the article, it says the latest cost-cutting measures comes as Google continues its most severe era of cost cuts in almost 2 decades as a public company. The company said in January that it was eliminating 12,000 jobs, representing about 6% of its workforce. They're doing this because of slowing sales growth following a record headcount growth. If you don't know, a lot of the layoffs that have been happening came from all the hiring that happened a few years ago. When COVID happened, a lot of these tech companies were just hiring like crazy, and you literally could just throw your resume out the door and have a job offer in like 20 minutes. Prime pickings for software developers and people in tech a few years ago because everyone was hiring and everyone was paying very well because they were short on staff and they wanted to bring in more talent. Well, now what's happening is that there's a decline in the economy. Things aren't looking as good for all of these companies. So now they're cutting back a lot of the staff that they hired a few years ago. Hence why you've seen so many tech layoffs recently and why it's now harder to get a tech job and why so many of these companies aren't hiring like they were a couple years ago. So it says cuts have shown up in other ways. The company declined to pay the remainder of laid off employees maternity and medical leave, CNBC previously reported. So I don't know much about that. I don't want to digress and go into a different topic here, but I didn't actually know that they were doing that. And if that's something you want me to cover, let me know and I can talk about that in another video. But it says in her recent email, the CFO said that layoffs were the hardest decisions we've had to make as a company. All of these corporate people are always trying to cry and say how hard it is for them to do that. But you don't see these C-level executives, lining up to take pay cuts so that they don't have to lay people off. They just always come out and say, we're so sorry that we have to do this. It's so hard for us to lay people off. Next thing you know, it's record profits and all those C-level executives that were crying because they had to lay people off get the biggest bonuses of their lives, while, all those people that had to get laid off are struggling looking for work. It's so funny that they're always like, this is the hardest decision that we've ever made. If the companies want to do the right thing, I think Tim Cook did that recently at Apple where he was taking less money. And then there's the story of Nintendo that years ago, the company wasn't doing well. And instead of laying people off, the CEO took like a huge pay cut. And he did that because it was the hardest thing that he could have done. He could have laid everyone off, but he chose the path of integrity. He chose to do the right thing. And that was to take a pay cut rather than to fire a bunch of people. I'm sure it was very hard for them to do. Continue to say in the email, it says, this work is particularly vital because of our recent growth, the challenging economic environment, and our incredible investment opportunities to drive technology forward, particularly in AI. And she referred to 2008 twice in her email, which is a pretty serious thing if we're going to be referencing one of our biggest economic downturns in the last, couple decades. We've been here before, the email stated. Back back in 2008, our expenses were growing faster than our revenue. We improved machine utilization, narrowed down our real estate investments, tightened our belt on T&E budgets, cafes, micro kitchens, and mobile phone usage, and removed the hybrid vehicle subsidiary. We've looked at our data to identify other areas of spending that aren't as effective as they should be or that don't scale at our size. Among equipment changes, Google is pausing refreshes for laptops, desktop PCs, and monitors. It's also changing how often equipment is replaced. Google employees who are not in engineering roles but require a new laptop will receive a Chromebook by default. Chromebooks are laptops made by Google and use Google-based operating system called Chrome OS. So basically, if you're not a developer and you're not in an engineering role, sure, if you're not upper management, because I guarantee you that the managers are still going to get their MacBooks. But if you're not, you're getting a Chromebook. They're like, we don't have money for MacBooks anymore, right? It also provides the best opportunity across all of our managed devices to prevent external compromise. That's just something they're saying to kind of validate their decision a little bit more. But the truth is that that's not the reason why, right? Because if that was the reason why, they would have done that a long time ago. They're just saying that that's one of the benefits of doing this. Another thing they're doing is that an employee can no longer expense mobile phones if one is available internally. The employees will need director or above for approval if they need an accessory that costs more than $1,000 and isn't available internally. Now it's like, hold on, you're going to need to get that approved first. And if you don't have a title, we're not giving it to you because you're a peon. So get out of here and go pay for your own phone and accessories. In February, CNBC reported that the company asked its cloud employees and partners to share desks by alternating days and are expected to transition to relying on CloudTop for their workstations. So Google's like seriously cutting back. Like these are serious cutbacks. When you think about like the perks that Google used to offer, when you think about like how awesome of a company it was to work at and all the things and amenities that you had by going into the office and what was available to you as an employee, those benefits and perks are really getting scaled back right now. Staplers and tape, this is the hot topic, the staplers. Staplers and tape are no longer being provided to print stations company-wide as part of a cost effectiveness initiative, according to a separate internal facilities directive viewed by CNBC. So no staplers or tape if you got to make a photocopy by the copy machine. We have been asked to pull all tape dispensers throughout the building. A San Francisco facility directive stated, if you need a stapler or tape, the receptionist desk has them to borrow. Like, this is janky, right? Like, this is Google. This is like the biggest tech company in the world. And they're like, look, we're not giving you staplers and tape. If you need a stapler or tape, you better go ask Becky at the receptionist desk because she's keeping a tally of how much everyone is using. And you better hope you don't go over your stapler and tape quota for the month because there's going to be repercussions and they might even take it out of your check. Almost seems like that's where this is headed, right? How much money were they losing on staplers and tape? Like, were people stealing it and like selling it in the office supply black market? I don't know. And it says, we've baked too many muffins on Monday. Google is also cutting back on some availability for employee services. We set a high bar for industry-leading perks, benefits, and office amenities, and we will continue to do in the future. However, some programs need to evolve on how Google works today. It says that these are mostly minor adjustments stated in a separate internal document from the company's real estate and workplace team. The document said that food, fitness, massage, and transportation programs were designed for when Googlers were coming in 5 days a week. Now that most of us are in 3 days a week, we've noticed that our supply to demand ratio are a bit out of sync. We've baked too many muffins on Monday, seen G buses run with just one passenger, and offered yoga classes on a Friday afternoon when folks were more likely to be working from home, the document stated. As a result, Google may close cafes on Mondays and Fridays and shut down some facilities that are underutilized. As part of January's US layoffs, the company let go of more than 24 on-site massage therapists. Man, rough life at Google. They're just getting rid of all the reasons why people want to work at Google. When they start removing all the reasons why people want to work there, pretty soon they're not going to get many people wanting to work there. And I find this article interesting because it's pretty common knowledge that a lot of these companies, including Google, are trying to get people back into the office. And while they may be on a hybrid schedule now, they have a lot of real estate investments that they need people to go to the office for because because those buildings that they paid for are sitting vacant, almost certain that their end goal is to get everyone back into the office. And some of these cutbacks that they're saying are due to the hybrid work system, I guarantee you that once they make these cutbacks, they'll never bring these perks back. Even if they bring you in 5 days a week at the office, well, guess what? You're buying lunch on Monday and Fridays. Not a big deal, right? I get it. These are all just extra perks. But if at some point you get rid of all the perks and benefits and basically all the reasons why people really want to work for you, eventually you're not going to be able to keep up with the competition that is able to offer those things. And I know everyone's going to cut back now, right? Because if you start seeing big companies like this cut back, you're going to start seeing smaller companies cut back. It's what happens when the economy isn't doing well. But when the economy picks up, believe me when I tell you, people at Google will never see the same perks that they had before because companies are just not going to spend it. That money can go to bonuses. That money can go to more innovation and more tech that they can build. And they don't want to get you muffins on Monday. They don't want to pay for your yoga on Friday. They don't want to give you massages. They don't care. All those things were reasons to keep people in the office. And now that they're having such a hard time getting people back in the office, they have a good reason to not keep those perks, because why would they do it? They're able to get rid of it and save some money, because at the end of the day, it's business. All these layoffs and all these companies cutting back, it's definitely not a good thing to see if you work in tech. And hopefully this blows over and in a couple years, we're all back to normal. It's obvious that we're heading into bad times when some of the biggest companies in the world that used to provide all these things don't want to provide them anymore because it's costing them too much. Obviously, they're not making money hand over fist anymore because they're at risk of losing too much money. And if you're seeing a company like Google do this, you're going to start seeing a lot more companies do this as well. The end of this article has the full email, and I'll also link the article down below if you want to see this article on CNBC. All right, with all that said, that's it for the Google cutbacks. Hopefully people are still able to get their tape and staplers at Becky's desk when they're in the office now at Google. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
But then they switched from the swing line to the Boston stapler, but I kept my swing line stapler because it didn't bind up as much, and I kept the staples for the swing line stapler.